All right, good evening, guys. Ken at Tortoise Capital. This is the Foundation's check-in for November 30th, 2023. Kevin asked this set of questions about the AAR, and he noticed that there's a variety of methods used in the chat room. And he's trying to work through what's best for his learning and development. He provided a sample of what he posted in the chat room for me to review. He thinks there's too much info in it, and some that would be considered system rules and always tend to be present. And then he referenced a quote, awesome, from the Foundation's trading book, where I say you should only identify 1 to 2 actions each day to take for tomorrow. And so his questions were, should I create all the elements on the chart fresh and new each day, or do I let them live there for a while? Do I fill all the boxes every day, or only the most standout things? If time allows in the Q&A, I'm wondering, could you discuss some practical ways to see how to use this AAR process? So I'm going to put this into the context of operational excellence and a combination of learning and operations, because this is how you create a culture of continuous systematic improvement. I'm going to begin by trying to find my pen. There it is. So the quote from the book was, simply put, for each of our plan, prepare, execute, and assess sub-processes, we simply identify those things we want to sustain and improve at the end of each trading day. Okay, so what that means is that our top level process how did that get, sorry, that should have been plan, prepare, execute, and assess. And what we're going to do is we're going to check our procedures and our methods for each one of these things. Like, we are going to be professional systematic traders, and we're going to have standards for what it is that we say that we're going to do. So if in general I have a strategy which describes the very broad approach that I'm going to use to gain systematic advantage and then win, I'm going to break that into those 4 phases: plan, prepare, execute, and assess. And I'm going to identify things that I must do in each of those phases in order to be successful. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a process map that shows how to do that. In a simple way, this chart here, the plan, prepare, execute, and assess versus sustain, improve, and action, is one of the ways that you might design a process map. All right. This one here, the 4-column learning journal, which is also part of this system, is a more formal specification for what to put in each of those 4 columns. So here's column 1. I'm going to notice, I'm going to be on the lookout throughout my plans and operations. I'm always going to be on the lookout for aha moments. And whenever an aha moment comes, in column 1, I'm going to write and record a rich description of the direct experience of what I was feeling and sensing and seeing and hearing and tasting about that surprising moment. I'm going to think about all my senses and all my feelings, and I'm going to try to write that experience down because I'm not sure yet which pieces are significant. So I want to capture that while I can, before the crime scene gets contaminated. And the idea is that the aha moment occurs whenever you get surprised. So we have the world, and you have a model of how you think the world works. And you watch and look at the world, and then you think about it in your brain. And then when you come to some conclusions, you put those tested conclusions into a model of how the world works. And so if an idea comes into your head, hey, there's an opportunity, or I wonder what happens if we tried that, you run that through your model to see what is the range of outcomes that could happen. And what do I think the shape of that histogram is like? What do I think is the most, and if I put the histogram, it's probably, this is the most likely outcome, and then maybe that's plus or minus one standard deviation, and maybe there's some things that could be really, really good. And then maybe there's some things that are really, really bad. And then maybe there's some things that are below average. And maybe there's some things above average. So that's if I don't do anything. And I say, well, since I have some ideas about how the world works, and I'm working at time t, and I don't have to put something in action until time t plus x, I have this much time to do something with my resources and my skills to change the shape of the outcome curve. I can mitigate risks. I can leverage tools or teammates to improve my outcome. So I can start shifting the expected profile of all the outcomes. And then, so all of this rational planning and iterating process, I mean, I could be using a rational analytical process where I'm looking at, 3 criteria to evaluate, and I'm looking at 3 states of nature, and I'm coming up with 3 different courses of action, and then I set up some kind of comparison matrix to say, in this kind of situation, course of action A is better than B is better than C, and on the basis of that, I can do some calculations and come up with a rational analysis. If you get beyond the region of computability and you get complexity and VUCA, you can't really do that. There's too much. So instead, we engage in what Fletcher called story thinking and imagineering and feeling, and trying to sense our way through this complexity to get some appreciation for what the risk rewards are, and then I can make a decision to do it or not. And then we start taking action through time, and then the world happens, life happens. And if we've got a good working model of the world, and the world behaves in a regular basis in alignment with our model, we're not surprised, and things kind of go our way, and we're not surprised by the outcomes. But every so often, something unusual happens, something unexpected, something unplanned for, and we get some kind of surprise moment, either really good or really bad. That aha moment is a signal that our model did not account for the world completely. That there was, maybe it was just this region over here that we didn't understand, or we used a rounding error, or we didn't account for that, or we thought it was a low probability event, but we have some kind of surprise. Now, I don't know why I got surprised. I just know that something unexpected happened, cause unknown. So I'm going to investigate that, because it is to my advantage to figure out what the strengths and weaknesses of my working model of the world are. And whenever I get an aha moment and I am surprised, then I want to subject that to systematic investigation and research, to figure out what's going on. Was this just a one-off fat tail event, or is there some new thing happening in the world that this time it's different and the world changed and my model is out of date and I got to fix it, or I'm always going to be coming up short? I don't know that until I've gone through some kind of systematic evaluation. So one of the things that I'm going to do is catalog all the data that I can when I get surprised, because I'm not sure what is going to be significant yet. So in my learning journal is how I continually try to improve my model so that it looks like the world. I want to have overlap. Like if the world is here and my model is here, I've got a really good coverage and there's only a thin slice in which I'm not prepared. But if my model is here and the world's like that, there's only a few places where my model's working and I'm wrong here and I'm wrong there and I'm unprepared. So this idea of the learning journal is how we iterate on our surprises to move towards a deeper understanding or appreciation of the world. Well, after I have put all my aha moments in, I'm then going to engage in some reflective thinking. I'm going to think about the experience. So I've moved out of the region of direct experience and into reflection. What it might mean, what it could mean, how many different lenses and perspectives can I look at? Do I have a team so that I can use everybody to help me look at the elephant? Remember all our discussions about circumnavigating the elephant. This is where your accountability team gives you an unfair advantage, because you've got all these different lenses looking at this interesting topic, and you're putting all those brains together and integrating them in some way that gives you an unfair advantage. So your team, your tribe, helps you understand the elephant. Once I'm done with reflective thinking, I have to put that into action if I'm going to do anything about the newfound knowledge. I got to go test that knowledge. So I have to have an action orientation in order to lock in the learning, to make sure that it works in the world. Having a theory isn't any good unless I can put it into action and do something with it in the world of trading. So in the commitment to action column, what am I going to do about these new insights that came out of my reflective thinking and sense making? How will I put it into action? With what priority? And what's my intended outcome? What's the experiment look like? What am I trying to learn or verify or validate? Where are the risks and rewards and the costs of conducting that experiment? What's the consequence of doing nothing? Well, I set up this as an experiment of action learning and trade it forward with one share, or adjust a rule, or whatever I'm going to do. I do that in the form of a SMART goal. I want to do something specific, measurable, action-oriented, relevant, and timely. Let's go. And then in the fourth column, how will I assess the results of that experiment and how will I measure it, interpret it, and what's the scale? And then when I get the data, what conclusions can I draw from it? And then how do I put that into action? It's not unusual to go all the way through that 4-column learning journal and to be surprised by the conclusions which invalidated some assumptions that you had in your model. That's actually a good result, because now your model moved that much closer to a dynamic world. And how many people had those same old assumptions you had and are now wrong? That gives you an edge. So the 4-column learning journal is a process of systematic reasoning and investigating, action learning, where I'm using all 3 forms of reasoning. I'm using induction, where I have a single case and I try to reason forward towards theory. I have deduction, where I can start with a well-established theory and then deduce some principles and create a hypothesis that should be true, and then test the hypothesis. And then I can use abduction, which is to start with a reasonable best guess hypothesis on the basis of experience, and then apply induction and deduction to quickly check on my professional sense, my professional knowledge. As you develop trading skill and professional expertise, you end up doing more abduction because it's a heuristic. It's an informed hypothesis, an informed guess, which you then validate by using bottoms-up and top-down reasoning. And all of that is designed to be tested in the world, and it's action learning. So I say all that to simply say that one of the things that we're going to have in our continuous improvement is this 4-column learning journal. And you want to use that to investigate the significant surprises, the ones that represent the largest challenges to your understanding of how the world works. And in most cases, that means that you're questioning your basic fundamental assumptions about how the world works. My favorite example is the washout pattern. I was sitting in Van Tharp's workshop in the back waiting for my turn to go on. And I said, what if I just made a list? And he was talking about beliefs and assumptions. I said, what if I made a list of all my beliefs, or what I think the world's beliefs are about trading, and then I took the exact opposite of each one of those and then turned that into a rule set. And it turned out that that gave me one of my favorite swing trade patterns. Like the traditional beliefs about the world are that you should have the courage of your convictions. Study hard, have the courage of your convictions, press on in the face of adversity, that you can't pick bottoms, and that you should focus on the strongest stocks and the strongest sectors, and that you should trust momentum and stick with it when you have a firm belief. Well, the opposite of that is try to pick bottoms, focus on the weakest stocks and the weakest sectors, don't believe in your trade, cut and run at the first sign of failure, and take a lot of trades and discover which ones work, and then leverage the heck out of the ones as they work. More or less, that's how the washout pattern came. And what I learned from that was that you can make a system out of an interesting or an odd collection of beliefs if you operationalize it and then test it, and then it works as a function of abduction, induction, and deduction. The proof is in the evidence, not in the beliefs. It's not the beliefs that matter. It's the evidence about how the rules work. Like, you can't just have a list of beliefs and think you've done the work. No, you got to turn that into rules and then test the rules and then evaluate the evidence to determine if there's anything there. That's research. Well, the learning journal then is reserved for those things that are genuine, significant surprises. Okay, so hold that one in mind. It's different than the daily AAR. So what I use the daily AAR form for is to routinely and systematically evaluate my planning, my preparation, my execution, and my assessment process. And what I'm going to look for in each one of those were significant moments. I'm looking for standout things. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is before you can even do this, you're going to check to see, what did I do that I want to sustain, and what did I do that I should improve, or what did I fail to do that I need to do, or what did I abstain from that I want to make sure that I don't, or that I continue to abstain. So this is both action and inaction. And then what are the things that worked and where do I got to improve in each of those four phases? And then for each one of those things, there's a set of actions that I could take to fix that. So I'm thinking of actions as solutions in the form of a SMART goal. I'm doing an abbreviated SMART goal. How could I fix that? What's one thing that I could do to make that better? So in order to come up with those things that were either exceptionally good or exceptionally bad, I got to have a standard to measure against, which means that I got to have rules to trade by. Like if I'm going to evaluate my planning process, I have a process map that shows you how I go through and select targets out of 3 categories. The usual suspects, continuations from yesterday, and any new patterns. Those are the 3 categories of targets. And when I go through my market review and daily report review, I'm considering regions and targets, and I come up with a set of priorities. I'm identifying triggers to look for, how I'm going to make decisions, and I do some contingency planning. When I have all that done, and I have a set of actionable targets inside a market context, then I'm done with my planning. So my process map is my standard for how I do that. So when I am assessing the planning phase, I'm saying, did I go through my written procedures for how to do that? If I did, I want to sustain. So if I followed all my rules, I can just put a check mark in there, say, it's sort of implied. Do what I said I'm going to do. Hey, but what if it turned out I didn't do those things? Improve. I got to have, make sure that I consider the regions. That's not an action yet. That's just a goal. I got to improve. I got to make sure that I follow through on check all the regions. That means I got to have some accountable method of improving my process. How did it come to pass that I didn't follow that? I didn't follow my checklist. Why didn't I follow my checklist? So I'm going to ask 5 questions about those things that I'm going to try to improve. What was the root cause of why I malfunctioned? Hey, maybe something happened that I didn't have a rule for. Maybe I need to put that in an aha moment. And then over the course of the next 2 weeks, if that happens like 6 times, maybe that's happening enough that I need to have a rule and I need to go through a process of upgrading my rule set. So maybe my action is upgrade my rule set. So what I'm looking for on my daily AAR is simply a list of actions I can take to improve. The sustain is really going to be, hey, keep following your rules, dummy. maybe I followed a rule and I wasn't really, fired up about it. I said, yeah, I'm following that rule. And it turns out that by following that rule, I averted a disaster which would have caught me by surprise if I had been slipshod. And it reinforced how important it was to always have my stop in. Oh, that would be, maybe I just want to make a note to myself and put that in bold or in red letters, or make a chart on the wall that reminds me to look at that. Just, hey, remember, you could have had a disaster. Maybe I got to do something like that on a sustain. But most of the time, 80% of the time, it's things that I need to do to improve that were shortcomings. And then I'm going to work on specific action steps. And then there could be 5 or 10 things that are in here, and I only want to pick 1 or 2 because otherwise I'll just get burned out. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for my daily AAR form, and I'm going to go to a to-do list. The to-do list contains all of the actions that I'm going to do. Some of them are associated with do the tasks that are driven by the learning journal. And some of them are going to be do, study the lessons in the foundations course. And some of them are going to be work on AAR lists or update my list of 1 to 1,000 things. Like if there's an action that I need to take, it's going on the to-do list, but I'm only going to pick 1 or 2, the highest priorities, the biggest payoff of the things that I'm going to fix tomorrow. But if I identified an action that I got to work on, but I'm not going to get to it tomorrow, I don't discard that. It's just going to go on a master to-do list in some priority, and then there's only so many things I can do every day, and I got to account for not just AAR comments, but I got to write a letter to my parents, and I got to go visit this, I got to scan that book, and I got to learn that lesson, and I got to, update my software. All of those things on the to-do list have a priority, and then there's some cutoff line of some reasonable amount of things that I can do. But I always make sure that the 1 or 2 things that are going to come from my daily AAR are in that actionable set of things that I must do tomorrow. And the other ones just find their place on the master priority list. And it doesn't have to be absolute precision over here. I might just have buckets of tasks that are in priorities A, B, and C, and I just dump it in there. And then whenever I clear something off my to-do list, now I make room for a new thing to come out of my master list. And that technique is going to be the personal Kanban. That's going to be my method for accomplishing tasks by limiting the amount of work in progress. So I have some amount of things on my to-do list, but I know that in the course of Monday through Friday or whatever, there's only a handful of things that I can work on and get to completion on. And when I complete it, I can put it in my, I can put that on my completed list. So the Kanban is a Japanese manufacturing technique which says, don't try to do everything at once. Pick the highest priorities, a couple of them at a time, crush them, pick them in the right sequence, so do first things first, but when you get it done, note it, and now you've cleared the deck. You've now cleared the deck. So now I can fix it. I can add a new thing off my to-do list. Personal Kanban is how you focus on a set of actionable priorities so that you don't have a million things going on at once and get none of them done. Like, how often do you start a thing and get it to 20, 50, 80, and 100% completion. And I get to 80% completion, and rather than just crushing it, and getting it done and shipping the product, you start a new task, and now you got a bunch of things at the 20%. Well, that's what Kevin is discovering with that whole idea of there was the unknown things in the ecosystem, and then there were things he was curious about, and things that he's working on, and things that he knows what it means, and then there's things that he has mastered. You want to get to mastery on the most important things, on the A priorities. So the way to do that is to focus on a few things, crush them, note it, celebrate, and then take the next highest thing and put it into the working slot, so that you're not always shifting from task to task and losing time in the setup and teardown and having a cluster. You want to be organized, and personal Kanban is the way to do that. So that means I have to have my little action plan for the things that I'm going to do in my Kanban. So look at the documents now that you really need to have. You need to have a book of standards that says these are my procedures that I'm going to follow. And so you don't have to write that out in here. You say, I'm going to do the thing that I said I'm going to do. And then you continuously improve that, and that's your SOP, your operating procedure. And then the AAR is simply saying, am I following my SOP? If so, good. If not, why not? And what do I got to do to improve my daily performance so that I comply with the SOP? Maybe my SOP is needlessly complex. So maybe I got to simplify. That's a task. So you got to find the root cause of why you're not following your SOP. Or if your SOP is incomplete, you got to add the things to make it complete as you discover them. How do you discover them? Through doing routine things routinely, but then also being alert to aha moments. Those things all go on to your to-do list. The to-do list goes into your action plan, simplified visual action plan. You want to keep this as simple as possible so that you don't spend a lot of time and money just trying to maintain all of these things. Simple is best. So a visual Kanban system or simple tasks is the best way to get that stuff done. Like when you do your daily assessment or your weekly assessment, if I said that I have to do those 5 things on my strategy or my planning, and then I got to do those 10 things on my prep, you want to make that red dot and green dot. You say, hey, I followed through on those 4 things on Monday, and maybe this is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like George is doing. And then you say, hey, I'm really doing well. There were a couple, I didn't do it that day, but it's not a trend yet. I fixed it, and I'm good to go. And then at the end of the week, you can just do a quick, I'm doing routine things routinely, and I'll just work on, I know why I failed that. I started too late, or I had a drink, or whatever. Okay, so I can survive that. But once you get to all green on all those, you might then say, let me start thinking about adding new things to my procedure off my to-do list that will continue to allow me to improve. But if you got a to-do list or daily checklist, and God, you're only getting, you got all of these things that you're supposed to, you got too many things on your list. So you got to prioritize. And then once you get to all greens, then you can start adding new tasks and get better as you learn to do things better, faster, or with leverage with a tool, or eliminate steps that don't add value. Like I saved 30 minutes a day in my planning by eliminating the reading of newspapers and watching CNBC. I was much clearer, and I didn't lose my energy, and I saved actually an hour a day because I didn't have to listen to those idiots, because everything that they said was usually irrelevant unless it was about something I was trading, and then anything they said about anything I was trading was irrelevant because I was making all my decisions on the basis of statistics and price. So there was no reason to look at news. So when I eliminated that from my process map, I found a whole bunch of new time, and I raised my energy level, and I was much more systematic about paying attention to what I needed to know. So, in the same way that I'm going to go through a process map to do all my planning, I'm going to go through my preparation process map to make sure that I am preparing my charts ahead of time, and I'm selecting my targets, and I'm doing my rehearsals, and I'm drawing the boxes, and I'm reviewing the 2-hour battle drill, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to do if the market closes here but gaps up. What do I do on a big positive gap? What do I do on a big negative gap? What targets does that lead me to look at? How am I going to manage the things in my trading stack? So if the market is up, I'm going to concentrate on the things that are at the top of the stack outperforming. But if the market is down, I'm going to look at the bottom of the stack to the things that are failing the fastest, and I'm going to use those two categories to come up with my targets. So anyway, you're going to have a written trading plan that talks about how you're going to get started, how you're going to find the targets that you prepared, how you're going to trade them, how you're going to allocate money to them, how you're going to shift, how you're going to manage your exits. You want all of that stuff in an execution SOP so that you can just read that and refresh it. So you don't have to write all that stuff down over here. You just want that in your SOP, your book of standards. And then your AAR can simply be the so what assessment and handwritten comments about things that you want to act on and things that you want to add to the to-do list. That's all this has to do. The weekly assessment, you're going to look for trends. Was there something this week that just keeps kicking my butt and I haven't fixed it? Now that becomes something that you really want to work on. Then you want to have a separate process for a monthly review and a quarterly presentation to your accountability partners. And you want to base it on evidence. You did or didn't do the thing that you said you're going to do. That's how you get accountability. If I'm looking at execution, I should only be trading things that I've prepared, and I should be good to go on time, will, pattern, and money, and I should be in the zero state, and I should have a process that allows me to get into the zero state quickly. And then at the end of the day, and I'm marking up my charts and all that other stuff, and I'm recording all my trades, and I perform my daily AAR, and I mark up my charts the same way every time. And then I use the standard lens to look at the things that were on the chart that I didn't see. If I traded here, from here to there, I look at not only this, but I also look at the other part where I didn't trade. And is there something happening in the market when I'm not trading that I'm missing that I want to get? So all of that I'm doing for assessment. At the same time, I keep my separate learning journal always at the hand so that whenever I'm surprised, I can put an entry in and scribble in all of the things that I'm feeling so that later when the market is closed, I can do the reflective thinking, come up with a decision on how to act, if at all, and then what to do with that hypothesis. I can fill those in when it's time to do that work, not when I'm trading, and I've captured all the data that I need to be able to support that systematic review for those exceptional things. So I'm maintaining my to-do list of things to do. I've got it mapped out on a calendar of when I want to get things done, so I know where my available time is. And I'm going to use the method of a personal Kanban to make sure that I systematically take my extensive to-do list and I work on the 2 or 3 things that are going to have the biggest payoff, so that I'm always working hard on the things that matter the most. So you've got to find your own best method of doing it. Some people they like to type it. Other people like to use handwritten notes. Some people use OneNote. But those are the basic components of this learning and operational ecosystem. This is how you get to operational excellence, where you have a good SOP with clear standards, and then make it a simple process where every step in that process is value add. There's no wasted motion, so that's efficient. And then the output gets measured against a standard for quality control, and now you're building quality control in all the way through. That idea of learning and doing with continuous improvement is how you get to operational excellence. And that is what professionals do. That whole book, Foundations of Foundational Trading, is really about the background on how to get there, the cultural and personal ideas to get you there. That's what I want to say in answer to Kevin. Lou asks, speaking of recording trades, what's your recommendation on how to treat a second or third position? Here's how I do it. My first position, let's just say, was an SSC. And then let's say I added at the 2R battle drill. I want to know if the 2R battle drill is a good pattern after an SSC. So I have to keep track of what the first position did so I can evaluate the quality of the pattern, and then I have to track what was the performance of the second trade so I can decide if that's a good thing to do. Hey, there's a couple things. Maybe the 2R battle drill has a high probability of success, but it doesn't give me the same return as an SSC. Let's say that the SSC without the 2R battle drill comes in at, I'm just going to make this up, comes in with a 1.0 average win plus or minus 0.2. So it goes to 1.2 and 0.8. Maybe that's the region of a normal successful SSC trade. But maybe only 20% get up to the 2R battle drill. And maybe 50% of them go to 3R and then fail, and then I get out at 2.75. And maybe 50% of them fail, and I end up scratching or giving a little bit back. So maybe 50% of them have a negative, and that expectancy is minus 0.3. I'm making that up. And the positive expectancy of the second position is 0.75. Well, that's a 2-to-1 reward to risk ratio with a coin flip. So that only by studying the 2R battle drill second entry as a separate pattern can I tell you if this is a good idea to do it or not with the rule set that you have and the targets that you're trading. And I can independently say, yeah, I should always take the SSC, and maybe that's good enough to take the two. But it may be, you know what, that's not good enough. What I should be looking at is finding more targets with SSC because the expectancy is better than the 2R battle drill. So instead of tying up money and attention, I should look at adding a wider span of control. But if a wider span of control is too hard, maybe the better solution after all is to just stay with something that's a little bit less payoff, but is easier to manage from doing routine things routinely. So the only way that you get to that is by studying the second pattern as a separate trade. So in my trade log, when I'm going through the day, maybe I'm trading EWZ here, and then I'm trading a couple other things, and then the second position comes in for EWZ, and that one was a minus 0.3, and the first one was a 2.75. Now the net of that trade is 2.15. But that doesn't tell the whole story. Because this was a separate decision, I'm going to evaluate it on its performance, and then the second position has to earn the money. And I'm going to hold that to the same standard of saying, look, I can put my money on the second position, or I can go find another SSC or a COTA 2 or a whatever the high payoff priority pattern is. You know, because I've got things that are in SSCs, COTA 2s, collapsing dragons, owls, Z3 pinch, and super pinch. Those are the 6 patterns I trade. Each one of those could also have a 2-hour battle drill. But if I just flow that into the overall performance of the SSC, I lose fidelity on deciding, is it better to take the 2-hour battle drill after an SSC, or is it better to put that money into a slowly developing owl? Maybe that. So unless I evaluate the second pattern, I can't make that kind of comparison, because on the basis of that analysis, I'm going to come up with a trading plan about how many targets and what my span of control is and how I'm going to asset allocate money and how I'm going to decide which pattern to take. What if I have a choice between an SSC, a COTA 2, and a 2-hour battle drill on an owl, but I only got enough money for one bullet? Which one of those do I pick? I have to have done this math in order to figure out what the right decision tree looks like. And that goes into your written trading plan. And then in your execution and your assessment, you say, did I follow the rules of my trading plan? Hey, my trading plan was to stop trading at 10:30 because of reasons, but you traded after 10:30. Well, why did you do that? And what were the results of that decision? Maybe the results are so good I need to rethink my decision about stopping at 10:30. Maybe I'm stopping at 10:30 because when I first started, I could only get focused attention for 2 hours, and then I was just too tired. But what if I increased my cardiovascular and my endurance, my cognitive resilience and stress management, and now I don't get tired at 10:30? Maybe it's time to retire that rule, whatever it may be. So that's what I want to say about that question. Treating the second position as as its own pattern. Okay? All right, that's everything I wanted to cover today. It's 8 o'clock, and we'll get fired up at 8:30. Now, what I want to show, I think you guys are in the research weekend, so I want to just so research, there it is. At the top of the research, if you're in the research weekend and you go to the first introduction and master timeline, the first one, master time schedule, you'll come up with this. These are the scheduled briefings that we have. There's a couple of them that I'm doing, when we have the foundations check-in, because there are things that I think you want to listen to, that you ought to listen to, like Bill Scheit this Sunday from 9 to 10. That's normally when we do the foundations check-in. I want you to listen to his presentation on his version of the blended monthly rebalancing and swing trading. And Hamad is going to debrief his trading journey of the past year on, oh, I did that wrong. That's not correct. December 2nd is not correct. How can I get that wrong? What's today? 30th? That's December 3rd. Sorry. And then Hamad is going to do his on Sunday at 10:30. Now, what I'm also going to tell you is, if the foundations guys, I'm going to let you listen in on those as well. So as these guys coordinate with me to get their videos uploaded and posted, the ones that are, I'm going to just invite you to the to those, because I'm trying to line them up with the foundations Q&A where I can, because you'll be able to determine if it's helpful or not. Now, there's an awful lot more in the research weekend than just those briefings. Like, I've got a ton of things that are in there. But for these guys, I think it's really important for you to see the briefings from current traders. And if you can at all, you definitely want to listen to Jim Carroll on next Friday. He's a pro money manager for almost 30 years, and he's got a volatility breakout system. And Phil Wu just ran Edge Raider, the back tester that I told you about. He just ran Edge Raider on Jim's system and rules over the last 10 years, and you're going to want to see that. How to be a specialty volatility trader. It's really good. And then you're going to want to see how Phil does the Edge Raider. His presentation, I think, is going to go Thursday of next week, like on December 7th. We're still coordinating that. But he's going to do a presentation on Edge Raider plus back testing. So I will keep you posted on which of those are locked in. And all you got to do is come to this chat room at those date time groups and be a good citizen and listen. If you're in the foundations course and you've signed up for their research course as well, then you can ask questions and all that and participate actively. If you're there as a guest, I would just ask you to listen quietly and appreciate what the guys are doing for you. And then you can make a decision later if you want to add the research weekend course to your plate. And I'll give you the 50% discount on that by being a foundation student, being the first time. Anyway, so those are the ones coming up. You can listen to their video presentations already if you're in the research course. Otherwise, you can just show up on that day and listen to the presentation and whatnot. Okay? All right, that's everything I got for you today. We'll get this posted, and we will catch you on the flip-flop. Okay? Take good care.